Welcome to the Wednesday Call Live. Now let's hear it for our special guest host, Adam and Beth Katz.
Woohoo! Hello, Alliance Nation. Great to be talking to you this afternoon or morning, wherever you happen to be in these United States or around the world. We were around the world over the last couple of weeks. Had a blast in Nigeria, and then Tanzania and Kenya and South Africa, Cape Town and Schlossberg, and living dreams. Making dreams happen, doing business, building relationships, making dreams happen. And that's what we want to talk to you about today. This is kind of a Katz family takeover of the TWC today. Sarah Katz Hartley is sitting there next to Beth, our eldest daughter. And then Emily Katz Cardillo is sitting there with her husband, Harry, our youngest daughter, second child. And we do have a son. Nobody ever knows about him, but he's out in Los Angeles. And we always talk about our kids were raised Albright. They kind of grew up with the mindset of what Andy always was thinking. They were around him a lot. They started coming to conventions at an early age. And obviously Andy and Jane were very influential in mine and Beth's thought process and the way we chose to run our family, run our marriage, the way we raised kids, all of those kind of things, and run our business. I said at NatCon I grew up Albright also, because I was 21 years old, maybe 22 years old when I met Andy. And we've known, it was our first year of mine and Beth's first year out of college, first year teaching, first year of marriage. We had a lot of firsts going on. And then to fall in with Andy and Jane, who are 5 years older than us, 5 years further in life than us, and to be able to see how they were living their lives. And we saw an example that we wanted to duplicate. And we jumped in, and it's been one hell of a ride. 34 years now. We go back. The short story is I was teaching school with Jane Albright. She was 8th grade science teacher. I was a 7th grade social studies teacher at Lillington Middle School. And the 8th grade English teacher was my mentor. She was assigned to me as my mentor at school, and she had gotten into Amway with Andy. And she put my name on a list. Andy called us up, said, "Are you keeping your options open, making some money?" And we realized very quickly that the $19,900 the great state of North Carolina was paying us per year to teach was not going to get us to any financial goals that we had. And so we were like, yeah, we're open-minded. He came over on I think was it Saturday? He came over, Beth knows the stories. Came over on a Saturday, sat down at our kitchen table for about 15 minutes and sold us on going to a meeting. And that's where it started, 34 years ago. And here we are today, hosting the TWC with our two girls and talking about, but the message, the reality is this: the message hasn't changed in 34 years, because here's what it comes down to: dream, struggle, victory. If you've been around the Alliance any sort of time, if you've been on the calls, if you've listened to, if you've come to conventions, you've been on the TWCs, the activity calls, you'll hear a lot about the dream, the struggle, and the victory. Okay, and that's where a lot of people get lost. They understand the dream. What they don't understand is the struggle. Okay, that dreams are not free, dreams are not cheap, and dreams are not easy. They're easy to come up with, but the execution and getting to that victory is everybody's got their race to run. Everybody's got to build their own story. Everybody's got to go through their own journey. And our journey is our journey. Hopefully your journey won't be as circuitous. That's a good word right there. As mine and Beth's journey was. The cool thing is this: I know what Beth and I went through to get to where we are today. And seeing Emily and Harry having the success that they're having the business that's coming together that they're having, seeing what Sarah's doing with the estate planning. And she was able to ride the estate planning train all the way to Thailand, winning the Thailand trip last year. Seeing them have the victories early on that Beth and I only dreamed about at 24, 26 years old. Sarah's 28 now. But that's what you want, isn't it? You want better for your kids than you had. And that's what we're here to talk to you about, how you can do better and how you can set an example so that you can pave the way for your kids to do better. And we're not here to talk about money. We're here to talk about how to create the money. We're here to talk about how to create endurance, because this is a marathon. We have someone in our office. Angel is training for a half marathon, and it's an impressive feat to be able to run 13 miles straight. And it's something I don't have a goal of doing, but good for her. But this business is not a sprint. If you're going to run a marathon or a half marathon or whatever distance you're going to run, you can't sprint out of the gates and use all your energy in that first mile, because then you won't have anything left for the last 12. You got to pace yourself. Now, you give it everything you got, but you give it everything you got with the idea that this is a marathon that I've started, and I'm in it for the long haul. Too many people are in it for the short haul. They give it a sprint, don't get where they want to go, and then they're just like moving on to the next thing. Like the squirrel. What is that from Up, the movie Up? The dog kept seeing the squirrel and got distracted, and that's what we've seen a lot of people do. They get distracted because the reality is this: because they never took the time to get a dream. They never took the time to figure out what the fuel will be to help them have that endurance that they want. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about today, is the power of a dream. John Maxwell said this: people with small dreams continue to live as small people. That's a powerful statement right there. People with small dreams continue to live as small people. So we're hoping to give you some tips and some things that you can take with you that hopefully will help you expand your dream, teach you how to dream, and so that you don't remain, if you are, I'm not saying anybody is, but if you are currently living a small life, playing small, that you can start stepping up into the major leagues and start playing bigger. That's what our hope is over the next hour and a half or so that we're going to be chatting with you today. So we talk about the P principle, the P as in the little vegetable, to be clear. And one of the things we say is this: the size of your dream is going to determine the size of the obstacles that will keep you from reaching your dreams. And a lot of people have a P-sized dream. They've never taken the time. They don't know how to. And so if you have a pea-sized dream, then a pea-sized obstacle is going to knock you off course. And the idea that's how you're going to live your life is very scary for a lot of, it's scary for me. That I've seen so many people, they come in all gung-ho, they're excited. Maybe you interviewed somebody and they were all excited, all into it, and then you follow up with them 24, 36 hours later, and they're ghosting you. And it's just like, what happened? What happened is this: life happened, and they don't have a dream. They don't have anything that was willing to sustain them beyond the first obstacle that came to them. What was that first obstacle? I don't know. It might be my wife wouldn't let me do it. Well, that's a big obstacle. I don't know. Okay. If it's a big obstacle, it's a big obstacle. Your mama made a negative comment to you. I don't know what it was. You told a buddy at work and he laughed at you. Do you think you're going to make money in that insurance thing? And so that's why it's so important to get your dream bigger than a P, so that it's going to take an actual, so that nothing can derail you. So it doesn't matter what happens in life. You can't be derailed because you know what you're going after. And so that's one of the big things. So, Beth, why don't you kind of jump in here and just talk about, some of the things we did to develop a dream, and where were we? If you can remember, you remember stories a lot better than I do. If you can remember some of the stories early on, some of those early struggles that we were dealing with, and how we didn't allow that to be the defining factor that we're still here today. So if you'll kind of jump off on that some.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Andy and Jane, for having us, and what an incredible opportunity to be on here to share with Alliance Nation, to have our kids with us. It's just does a mama's heart good. Adam, talking about peas. So you do have to know something about Adam. As we were traveling with Andy and Jane, and we went to all these 5-star restaurants, they'd always come in and say, "Hey, do you have any allergies?" And Adam was like, "Well, I'm kind of allergic to vegetables." because he is going to avoid vegetables at all costs. So he went to this in Cape Town. We went to Chef Nikki's house, and she prepared a 5-course meal for us. And the first thing they set in front of Adam was a bowl of pea couscous, and it was chock full of green peas. That's not Adam's favorite vegetable, so we're talking about peas, but he ate those peas. Then the next dish they sat was, y'all, it was a whole plate of mushrooms. Now, I have seen Adam Katz eat peas, but I have never seen him eat mushrooms. He will find them anywhere and knock them out, and he ate the entire plate. Why? Because we were with our very best friends, Andy and Jane, and they were exposing us to an experience that will, it's just a life-changing trip. And he wasn't going to let a little mushroom or a little pea cloud that experience. So he will eat mushrooms in Cape Town, South Africa. I don't think we'll get him to eat mushrooms anyplace else, but we did there. And so I think that's just so representative of what we did early on. The first time we saw a business opportunity from Andy and that exposure, that we sat in that meeting, like many of you have sat in a hot spot or you've seen a virtual plan, and there was that dawning of an idea of our life doesn't have to be paycheck to paycheck. We don't have to have the struggle. And we were only 6 months into marriage, 6 months into teaching, and we were already feeling, like we were excited. We were excited to be married. We were excited to have that first job. But already all those pressures were just making it hard to get up in the morning, making it, getting those knots in your stomach. Just that feeling of, is this really what we went through 4 years of college for? And how in the world are we going to make it if this is all there is? And so we sat in that first hot spot and we were like, wait a minute, we can do something different and therefore have something different. And honestly, we had no clue what that business model was going to look like, and then come along the Alliance. We had no clue what it meant to get an insurance license and to start selling. And I remember the first time I sat in the meeting that Adam was talking, so a couple of years into our insurance career, and I was like, oh my gosh, he actually knows some insurance stuff. Like, he knows something. But it's just been this whole journey of, if we want something different, we can't stay the people that we were in that moment. And so we were going to have to change. We were going to have to do something different. And what has allowed us for 34 years to have that mindset and to fight through all the struggles that are going to come, that have come, that will continue to come, because we're promised that in this life we will have struggles, is the fact that we're doing life with people who have a bigger vision than what we currently have. And so surrounding yourself with the leaders of the Alliance, anytime you can get into those rooms and you can see a different thought process, you can see, oh, this huge challenge they think is nothing, or they're giving us a warning signs. I'm not aware there's a problem coming, but they're seeing a problem coming and they're helping me address it. Changing that willingness to be in that circle and be influenced by other people is the defining factor of our life. We made that decision that if Andy and Jane asked us to do something, our answer was going to be yes. The how we were going to do it would come. We'd figure that out. But if whether it was go over to their house and order takeout Chinese and watch a movie, or order pizza and watch a movie, and we did a lot of that. But every time we were around them, we left feeling like there can be hope in our life. That if we'll pay the price that they're paying, then we can have the things that they're having.
Yeah, and it was that decision that we were going to do whatever we were going to say yes, and we weren't going to allow our circumstances, our present circumstances, to define what our answers were going to be. You know, so many times people will say, I can't do this because of fill in the blank. And usually it's money. You know, in a lot of cases, the reason people can't do something is because they don't have the finances for it. And it just got to a point where we didn't have the finances for it either. But what we did have was this. We had a willingness to sacrifice and a willingness to figure things out. And I think a lot of people have lost that. They're just not willing to figure anything out. You know, they get their mindset and go in one direction, and that's how it's going to be. And instead of being open to what the universe can bring them. You know, for Beth and I, we give all the honor and the glory and the credit to where we are today to God. You know, His hand is on our business. We see His hand on our business, and where we are today is because of that. And we can trace that all the way back. I don't have time to tell the story today about how we ended up in Harnett County, and I ended up in a school with Andy Albright's wife and Anne Marie, who put my name on a list. You know, but you talk about where you're supposed to be. The question becomes, are you going to keep fighting where you're supposed to be? And or are you going to settle in and accept that this is where I've been placed? Let me make the most of it, and let me win where I am. And I think that's one of the big things. And so your big challenge is the 6 inches between your ears. That's the biggest thing that keeps you from having success. That's the biggest thing that kept me down. My self-image. Was I worthy? Did I have anything to offer other people? All of these were things I struggled with. You know, I didn't like rejection. I had these fears of what would happen if I actually went all in. You know, all of these things. I had to change who I was so I could become the person I needed to be to have success where we are. And good news, bad news is this: we were able to change. Beth and I did not come into this with any special set of skills. Now, don't get me wrong, we were pretty smart. You know, both of us went through college on a 4-year scholarship called the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program. You know, so we had success we could look back on. We had success in life, you know, college graduates, scholarships, all of those kind of things. We came from solid families where both of our parents, all 4 of our parents are college graduates. And so, I mean, we saw success around us. But there's always that something in the back of your head saying, yeah, but that's for other people. That's not for us. We're not destined to have that. We're not destined to have that kind of life. So the key becomes, how do I work on my brain, the 6 inches between my ears, to get that fixed so that we can become the people we need to be so that we can enjoy the lives that we always dreamed of. And so that really comes from the books, the audio, and the meetings. So, Sarah, if you would kind of take off on some of that association piece. I don't remember how old you were when you started going to different conventions with us. But you know, one of the things that I will say about Emily and Sarah both is this: they took this very seriously from the beginning. Like they didn't come to convention. Well, actually, they came to convention to find people who brought babies with them, so that they could babysit and run around and grab some babies. But when they weren't holding a baby, they had a notebook out and they were taking notes, more notes than I was taking, more notes than Beth was taking. They took it seriously. They were there to get something out of it, and they are note takers. So, Sarah, talk about maybe some of those early days, coming to those first few conventions, and what you were picking up, maybe completely unintentionally, but it was just kind of seeping in.
Yeah, I think I was 12 the first convention I went to. So that would put Emily about 9. And I don't totally remember what led up to us coming to convention other than we were going to babysit. And you can make bank babysitting for Alliance families at convention. If you can get into that niche, you can do it. But I was very open to, this is where my parents are learning. This is how they're providing the life that we have. And, Emily and I had seen Andy and Jane's house. It would have been cool if our house looked like Andy and Jane's house. So let's learn what we can learn so that we can have those things. And I picked up a lot then, but now living life, I see how much those principles have actually come into play. You just talking about, you guys made the commitment whenever Andy and Jane said, "Can you be here?" You said yes. And it didn't matter what that was. Well, being a military spouse and being in new places constantly where I don't know anybody, my rule has been, if someone asks me to do something, I'm saying yes, because that's how you get the community, that's how you get the relationships. And so that's how my husband and I ended up rock climbing once a week. Like, that's not something I would have ever said yes to. That's not something that's in my wheelhouse. And yet it has become a weekly ritual. It's where our community comes from out here. And I'm so grateful for those principles. The other thing that it makes me think of is the amount of travel that we've done just because of where our priorities have landed. When we lived in Oklahoma, being home with family for important moments was important to us. Being able to come to these conventions was important to us. And so travel has always been a priority in our lives, in our budget. And even when it wasn't totally in our budget, we made travel the priority. And I compare that to some other people who we knew through military life who, were the same rank as my husband. We were making the same income, and their lives look so vastly different just because they weren't prioritizing things the same way that we were.
And we should have done this earlier. Sarah, introduce yourself. Tell us about Jacob. Tell us about your two little boys, my two little boys. And just for the folks who don't know your background and who you are, obviously they know you're our daughter through this, but tell us a little bit more about where you guys are in life right now.
Yep. So I am Sarah Katz Hartley. We currently live in Macon, Georgia, kind of smack dab in the middle of Georgia. We've been here for 2 years. My husband Jacob and I have been married for 6 years, and he's a captain in the Air Force. So we have 2 little boys. Our son Michael is 3, and Winter is just turned a month on Monday. And so that's where we're at in life. Is one, we've just gone through a huge transition, welcoming another little kiddo into our house. But we have spent 4 years in Oklahoma, and now we're in Middle Georgia for 2 years, and probably looking at moving in the next year or two. That's where we're at. And I have been working in the Alliance. Yeah, I've done a lot kind of in the back office with my parents' side, helping agents kind of navigate their dreams and their passions. But within the last year and a half, I've really fallen in love with the estate planning process. And so that's become a huge passion of mine, and doing the seminars, doing the estate plans, and making the big money on the back end. Thanks to Emily, especially.
So, we're so proud of Sarah. She ended up number 4 in the country on implementations, estate plan implementations. I think you had 88 for the year, something like right. That. And was just killing it on that. And then she's, Emily has more experience, even though Sarah's the older sister. Emily has more Alliance experience, and she's also an advisor. Has her series licenses, all of those things. So Sarah has brought Emily in on a lot of these conversations on the financial reviews and helping with those kind of things, because that's the point of estate planning. This is not an estate planning call, but the point of it is not to just get the implementation money. The point of it is to tap into their incomes and their finances, and really help the bigger picture for these clients with annuities and IULs and things like that. Okay, so Sarah, when you kind of started with us, we read a lot of books. What are some of your favorite books that you've read Alliance wise?
I wish I'd known you were going to ask me that question. There's so many that I feel like have. I mean, any book by John Maxwell, I feel like something's majorly clicked. I think the first one of his books that I really read when I was at a point where I could lock in and hear it was Intentional Living, which is one of his more recent ones. The Dream Manager by
Matthew Kelly.
Yep. That's been such a huge one. That one really unlocked kind of a passion for me, and what I've been doing a lot with Adam and Beth's agents in the office and things like that. And then, of course, Goals by Brian Tracy. It's such a massive one about building that dream, about seeing the future of what you want in your life.
Awesome. So, moving on, Emily and Harry, obviously Emily was raised in this business. Like Sarah just mentioned, she started coming to conventions at 9, and Emily came with a purpose. Emily, if you would, talk about your early years on how this business impacted you, and book reports, selling the dolls, all of those things, doing recruiting calls for me, talking like a sock puppet, all of those kind of things, and just kind of talk about your early years, middle and high school years, and how that connected you to the Alliance, and what role that played in where you and Harry are today.
Yeah, so Emily Katz Cardillo, we are based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Graduated from NC State with my bachelor's in business marketing. Go Pack, yes, go Pack for the win last night. And I started part-time whenever I was in college while going to school, and then I graduated after 2 years with my bachelor's and have been full-time ever since then. But I knew very early on, like I tried to convince my parents that NAA University was going to be as good as any other college degree, because I just wanted to jump into the Alliance very quickly. And it started from coming to events. The reason we were at events was because I had just grown up around entrepreneurship. I saw my parents building a business. I saw the passion and everything, and learned a lot of those principles even before I started really learning them. They were naturally in what you guys were teaching us growing up. And so we had a school project in 4th grade to make Valentine's Day boxes. And I had a passion for sewing, and so I made a doll box, and then ended up just starting sewing those dolls, and was like, hey, I'd like to be able to sell these. So I had a business meeting with none other than Andy Albright in the Bahamas, in Atlantis, on one of the company trips. And I scheduled a meeting with him, sat out by the poolside, told him what I wanted to do. And it was about a month before family reunion that year. And he said, hey, if you can make 100 of these, then we'll go ahead, we'll set up a booth and you can sell them at conference. And so that was why we were at conference. But in between, I would be sitting out there at the booth some, but then I was in the meetings, and I knew some of the people just because y'all were best friends with them. So I had slight relationships with people. And so it was exciting to see these people I hadn't seen in a while, and just sitting in those meetings and then taking notes. And who's the Pursuit of Happiness? What was his, I know he was the speaker.
Chris Gardner.
Remember Chris Gardner, he was the speaker there, got to meet him. And if you've ever been to one of our events, you know the culture is unlike anything else. It's just excitement, it's energy, it's passion, and you're hearing people's stories, and it's just the time passes by like none other, because you're just watching people going through that dream, struggle, victory, and you're hearing those stories. And so I came to all the events. I would miss school. I'd leave early on, I guess Thursdays or Fridays to get to conference. I was like, I don't care. That was never going to be, because ultimately this is where I was going to get my education. This is where I was going to learn. And like Sarah was talking about, it has shaped the decisions we make, everything, talking about what is negotiable. And I think the things that are negotiable in other people's lives are flip-flop from what's negotiable in ours. Like going to events, going to meetings. And I talked about it with school just a second ago, but like there's a lot of people that I talk to. It's like, oh, I need perfect attendance. I would never miss school for this. I could never miss this class. And in my mind, I'm like, that's on the back burner. I want to learn how to actually apply this stuff. So they would miss out on a leadership event to go to a class. It was flip-flop for me. because it's just, Andy taught me very early on, what are you ultimately trying to get out of life? And the decision right now, is it taking me further away or closer to that decision? It's how I ended up at the high school I went to. It's how I ended up at NC State. It's how I ended up in Florida where I met Harry. It's just every single decision was something I would go to Andy to consult on, of what is this, where I'm trying to get to, is this taking me further or closer? I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. Emily found a mentor. And not everybody has access to Andy Albright like we have access to Andy, and not everybody's kids have been able to get access to Andy like our kids have had access to Andy. So we know they're blessed for that. We know it's a unique circumstance, but you have access to somebody that has Andy's thought process. See, when we do agency manager meetings, here's one of the first things Andy says at the beginning of the agency manager meeting. Everybody that's going to be at the conference is in one of our groups. Okay, we are the leadership team. So you have access to somebody who has learned philosophies and thought process from Andy. So even if you can't get your 9-year-old a business meeting with the CEO, you can get your 9-year-old a business meeting with somebody who understands the thought process of our CEO. And so take advantage of those opportunities. And that's where the power of association becomes such a big thing, is that decision making. But it comes down to, where are you going to be? I'm reading a book right now. It's called Nine-Figure Mindset or something like that. And it talks about, when you know where you want to be 10 years from now, then every decision becomes very easy. And you don't have to go out 10 years. I think you can go out 2 years. If you know where you're trying to get 2 years from now, then every decision becomes very simple. It's is this moving me closer or further away, like Emily was talking about? And when you put things in that perspective, it makes it very easy to determine what's more important, going to class or going to convention. Taking half a day off work or coming up to the convention on time. Things like that, because we do understand we have a lot of part-time people here also. It's funny because the kids grew up watching me put in miles and work stupid, crazy hours, coming in at 2 or 3 in the morning. They were asleep, but they knew that's when I got home, and then up with them for school the next day and out, chasing something else down. And so they saw the work ethic, and they saw me put miles on cars. And so like Sarah was talking about, family events are important. It doesn't matter where they live, because they saw that we were going to prioritize. So let's hear a little bit from Harry right now. Harry, you kind of married into this crazy culture that we have. You married into this crazy family of what we prioritize in our lives, which is different than what a lot of people do. My mom still thinks I'm crazy when I do certain things. Like Saturday, I got a meeting in Charlotte. I'm going to wake up Saturday morning, drive 3.5 hours to Charlotte, do the meeting with Tim Ogie, and then when everything's done, maybe we'll grab some dinner together, and then I'm driving 3.5 hours home. And it's just like, there are people who won't drive 3.5 hours for a weekend. To stay someplace for a weekend, that's too far. And I'm doing it because I still have a dream. So Emily was raised that way. She may not have given you much choice in terms of whether you were going to come along with her or not. But talk about maybe a little bit of the way you were raised, and how marrying into this culture, the Alliance culture, and into our family that is so committed to being a part of the Alliance culture, how that kind of contrasts those two things with the way you were raised.
Right. So obviously I had a much different upbringing than both Sarah and Emily. I grew up suburbs of Florida, middle-class family. What I mean by that is we had a roof over our heads, enough money to pay the light bills, just like most people in America. And everybody around me was more so surviving than dreaming, is mostly what I saw, right? Very much so the mentality of go get a 9-to-5 job, pay your bills, contribute to your 401k. Hopefully Social Security is still around by the time you're 65 and you're able to retire, right? So coming from that was kind of where I was at. I didn't really even know how to dream before I was introduced to kind of the culture, the association of the Alliance, just because people around me weren't representing that. I really very much so connect with what you said, Adam, of, you saw people who were having success, but you felt like it wasn't for you, right? It was almost like, oh, well, that's them, right? They can have success, but for me, this is my path. I'm supposed to work this job, retire when I'm 65, all that good stuff. When I first met Emily, I was coming from that background, very skeptical. I was like, is this real? She was showing me the proof, the paychecks, all that stuff. She's like, hey, you can get into it. I was like, I don't know. I don't really think came to the convention, right? Very still skeptical about it. Oh, well, I'm going to go to this insurance convention. They're going to talk about policies and all this different type of stuff that I'm not really interested in. And getting in there and starting to hear people talk about dreams, talking about how it's possible for me too. And it was almost a realization of like, is it really possible for me too? Like, it was starting to just dawn on me. I had never heard people talk like that before, especially talking to me about how it could be possible for me, how I could do it, shaking hands with those who were having success in it. So it really just flipped my entire perspective. And now it's just crazy to think about the things that we've been able to do up to this point, being 26 years old, 24 years old, and the things that we're dreaming about doing. If I was able to just look into my mind like 5-6 years ago, just to think of the things that I'm thinking about doing now, I wouldn't believe you, right? So it's just been incredible to see, and we're just super excited to keep growing.
So yeah, and so why don't you guys talk about some of the things you've already been able to do? And Emily, you've only been out of college. Well, you graduated. So you've been out of school now 5 years. You graduated at 19, and you guys have been married now almost a year and a half. Actually, just over a year. But what are some things you've been able to do that? And I love this because Emily will tell me what some of her friends will say to her in terms of, in college, and Emily would say, let's do this. And they're like, not all of us make $1,000 in a sale or whatever they said. So tell that story. And just talk about some of the things you've been able to experience because you went all in coming straight out of college and all of that.
Yeah, so that story you're referencing, I was out to dinner with friends, and like the week before I had I think a $3,000 week or something in college, and I posted it on Instagram, and then we were out with friends for like somebody's birthday, and it was something as stupid as like the tissue paper, and I always just throw away the tissue paper, and she was sitting there like folding it up, and I'd never seen anybody do that. I was like, oh, you're saving that. And I was like, I normally just throw it away. And she's just like, well, not everybody makes $3,000. I was like, you can. I mean, you want to get your insurance license then. But yeah, so I mean, some of the crazy stuff. And we have done some really cool stuff. I think we are also in a season where we're being intentional about investing in our business. So some of the stuff we are dreaming about, even if we could potentially do it now, we're delaying that gratification. I think it's more so the freedom and the frequency to do what we want. I mean, we went on our last year alone, we did our honeymoon in Italy. And so we were there for about a week and just we did whatever sites we wanted to see, ate really good food, enjoyed that time. Then we were in Cabo, but we did multiple family vacations in between that, traveled down to Florida to see his family, was in North Carolina. We just booked our tickets for Thailand and super excited. Like we're both going to be flying first class for the first time and like lay down seats. And I'm excited to share that experience with him and just doing it together. But we're flying on some of the top rated first class airlines, Qatar and Singapore. We're going to be taking the longest international flight in the world direct from New York to Singapore. And so it's crazy stuff like that. And in comparison, I have friends who are traveling international and they're doing it on the minimum budget possible. We're going to stay in hostels. We're going to do, and that's not our experience. We're going to enjoy this time because we're putting on credit cards for the points, Andy, but we're not putting on credit cards because we don't have the money. we're able to do life that way. We're able to go out to nice dinners and travel. But travel to me is always the biggest thing, and I think that's been fun to just have that flexibility and do it whenever we want. It's not like, oh, we have to take off 3 days of PTO. We can, like Sarah called me up the other day. My parents had just flown out to Africa, and Sarah needed some little help with baby Winter. And I was like, I booked the flight 3 hours before it was taking off. I was in the middle of a Zoom call. She was like, hey, can you come help me out? And I booked the flight, got to the airport like an hour later. And it's just like, most people plan that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, let's do it.
And she wasn't worried about the money. And the way this business is, she can run her business from anywhere. So she can just as easily run a business with a 2-week-old in her arms, making phone calls, coaching sessions, doing financial reviews for agents and for clients and all of those things. And that's the beauty of what the Alliance does, is it gives you that flexibility. But what I will tell you, though, is this: flexibility is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Because, while a lot of what we do is not hard to do, it's even easier not to do it. Making phone calls is not difficult, but it's even easier not to make phone calls. And so understanding, creating those disciplines. So what helps you create those disciplines? The dream helps you create those disciplines. Because if you understand what it is you're going after, the goals, Sarah mentioned Brian Tracy's book on goals. If you understand Andy's coin, what do you want? How do I get it? What do I want? How do I get it? The two sides of the coin. When you understand that thought process, first and foremost, you got to establish what it is you want. So how do you dream? What are some things you can do? Well, we talked about the books, the audio, the association, the meetings, all of those kind of things. That's one way to dream build. Beth, talk about some other tangible things that we did together as a married couple to build our dreams, and also some things we did intentionally with the kids to help them have some buy-in to what we were doing and how to build their dreams.
Right. Absolutely. I think back to one of the first things we did was Andy suggested getting a subscription to the Robb Report and just flipping through pages of honestly things that at one time we would have never considered spending money on. I know you talked about a $100,000 ink pen. We're like, yeah. And maybe even today I still wouldn't buy that pen, but I could put that money towards something that someone else might think is incredibly extravagant. I'd be very happy with doing it. But it is that opening your mind to what else is out there. So we grow up and we see what our parents are like, we see what our family is like, our friends, and we think, the whole idea of I want to compete with the Joneses. And so you are, you're thinking, oh, well, they just got a 50-inch TV, color TV. Now we got to go get a 55-inch TV so it can be bigger, and that kind of stuff. And that really means nothing. It's just trinkets, right? But when you start thinking about what are the things that really matter, how would you envision your life? What would that look like? I remember the first time we got to spend a week or a few days at a beach property that Andy and Jane had rented, and they invited some agents to come in. And first of all, how cool is this? They had a dream. I think they rented the house for like 2 weeks, and they took a week of that, and it was their family. It was Andy and Jane and Haley and Spencer, and they had their time. So they prioritized that. But then they opened it up the second week and invited different agents to come stay a couple of different days. And so we just got a peek in there and to see what it's like to stay at a 5,000 square foot house that's on the ocean that you can walk out on, and then just hanging out. And it was on that trip, kids and girls, if y'all remember, that was on that trip that Jane taught us about going crabbing, and we watched Holly Davies go down and pick up these crabs and throw them in the bucket, and we got to show the kids what it's like. Hey, when you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, watch them. Because one will start climbing up the side of the bucket and the other ones will start pulling them down. And our kids saw that. And they saw it in the context of people saying, don't be that. You need someone else who's going to be like, here, let me help you get out. And so we could teach those lessons in those moments. But we expanded that vision of what would that look like. I remember when Andy and Jane moved back to Andy's house, the house that his dad had built, and they were it hadn't been lived in for a couple of years, and just the the cleaning up and all that whole process. And Jane's like, oh, you know what? The outlet covers need to be replaced. And so we went to Lowe's, and what are outlet covers? Like 25 cents, 10 cents, that back then 10 cents a piece. And I watched her buy outlet covers to replace every outlet in the house. And to me, that was like, you can do that. Like, you don't have to just do them one at a time. You can just do them all. And it wasn't a huge investment, but it was a huge change in thought process. And so we wanted our kids to know that you don't have to do the way you've seen everybody else do. You get to pick the things that matter to you and pursue them with passion. So we've spent many New Year's Eves with poster boards and magazines and telling them to go, find what would you like to go? Who are the people that you would like to meet? And I'm thinking Rob Lowe was on one of your...
Selena Gomez was on one of Andrew's.
So Andrew put Selena Gomez on one of his dream boards. He's working in home goods in LA. He's really in that grind of trying to figure out, like, I have a dream, but I haven't figured out how to go through all the struggle yet. He's in that angst, and it is angst to be in the middle of that. But he's in that moment. But one of the people that was on his dream board, Selena Gomez, believe it or not, went shopping at Home Goods, and he got a chance to meet her. So it is those crazy moments that just pop up. So I am going to pop it over to Sarah. Tell the story about meeting Rob Lowe.
So one of my favorite celebrities, Rob Lowe. He is number 2 on my list. Number 1's Hugh Laurie. So if you have a connection, please call me. But Rob Lowe was doing like a memoir tour, and actually Emily found tickets to the show in Raleigh. This was when my parents were in Hawaii on an Alliance trip. And so one night we drove up, my sister and my brother and I, and we went to see this memoir show. And as soon as Rob Lowe came out on stage, I'm instantly in tears. Just a reaction I never expected myself to have. I went in very much like, hey, he's a normal person. I'm a normal person. It would be cool if normal people could meet. No, I was a mess. But at the end of the night, we had seen there weren't meet and greet tickets for sale. And so we were hoping that he would just be kind of out after the crowds had kind of left. At the end of the show, we found out that there were tickets for sale, but you had to be like a member of the theater to even get access to them. And so again, we decided, all right, we're just going to stay until the end of the night, until everyone's cleared out of this building and they're kicking people out.
Come early, stay late.
Exactly. Come early, stay late. These are the Alliance principles that we just adapted into our life very naturally. And so we're waiting till the end. Everyone's cleared out. It's time for us to go. And I'm still sobbing because now I'm not going to get to meet Rob Lowe. And as we're walking out, one of the security guards asked me what was wrong. And he took pity on us and said, well, hey, I don't know for sure, but this is the door they normally leave the building from. And so Emily, Andrew, and I went outside to that door, waited in pouring rain for an hour and a half until Rob Lowe left the building. And there were it was us and then maybe 7 other people who had come. We were the committed. We were going to meet him, and we got photos with him. We got selfies. We got to shake his hand. It was amazing. It was a dream come true. And it's the kind of thing that when you put on your dream board, I'd love to meet Rob Lowe. How on earth is that going to happen? And yet it's something I wanted. It's something that we opened ourselves up to see where an opportunity could present itself. And then we put ourselves in the position to take the most advantage of it whenever it happened.
And you ended up on his Instagram page.
We did, yeah. It was a very cool night. We called them in Hawaii. I think it was, 2:00 in the morning for you guys. Just out of our minds excited about what had just happened.
So yes.
Good.
It's just those kinds of things. Like, I watch our kids live with a tenacity and a vision that Adam and I certainly did not have at our age. Honestly, there are times that they grasp it even better now than we do, I think. And so I see how much Emily and Harry want to travel and how they've prioritized that. And I love how Emily now has companion pass with Southwest so that she and Harry can fly just about anywhere. And it's just the cost of one ticket. But she got that because she went through the travel to build the business and earn that status. So it really is, it's going to require intense work. So the kids saw Adam leave. When we first came out with the hotspot concept years ago, we were in a struggling place in our business. We just, honestly, we always won't think that success is all the way up, always uphill, and when you get to the top, you've topped. Well, no, there's still ups and downs along the way, and we were just in one of those down moments. And Adam said, I feel unworthy and this, but what I know I can do is I can go run these meetings. And so he would book his calendar. We were running those meetings across country Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He would leave us Monday morning, he'd fly back in on Friday. And he did that for months at a time, because and that became a saving grace for us. It was something he could do when he felt like other things were out of control. He did what he could do. And that was invest in other people. And that was the example that the kids saw. They may not necessarily have understood just how fragile Adam was headspace, because he did a really good job of trying to protect the kids from that. But they saw that what he did was work. And I think that's one of the greatest blessings that Adam's given to the kids, is that, hey, anything worth doing is worth fighting through all the hard, all the yuck, all the whatever. Just because you got to get to the other side. You've got to go through. I wish, we talked to Emily and Harry, like, I wish I could protect you from the struggles that are coming, that you've been through. But this is part of the process. You're going to have to go through that. And that's why that dream has to be big enough that when all that mess happens, you still have a dream that outshines the problem.
Yeah, it becomes, and I don't care what your dream is. Like, I'm sure there's some people on this call listening and be like, oh, really? That was the big dream, to shake hands with Rob Lowe? And for Sarah, it was. The question I have for you, I'm going to look straight into the camera. The question I have for you is, what is it that you're willing to sacrifice for? Because dreams are very personal to each person. My dreams have nothing to do with your dreams. Your dreams have nothing to do with mine. It's like problems. You got your problems. I got my problems. You don't want to deal with the stuff I deal with. I don't want to deal with the stuff you deal with. Everybody's got their stuff. And what I see, though, is so many people allow the stuff to overwhelm the dream. And I don't know if it's because that people have chosen not to work on the dream hard enough, or not to make a commitment strong enough to be able to fight through whatever is happening. A phrase I learned early was this: if I could have figured out a way to quit with honor, I might have quit. But I never could figure out a way to quit with honor. It always occurred to me that I might bump into Andy at a Walmart or something 5 years later and see what his life turned into, and knowing I quit on my life and Beth's life and our kids' life. So to me, it was a decision that this is what we were going to do. How we were going to do it, I had no idea. I mean, we have our systems. I knew what needed to be done. But how to grow myself to be able to execute what needed to be done was a struggle. And that's why the dream is so important, is because you're going to go through the struggle. You're going to go through hell to accomplish the things you want. The mistake most people make is they set up camp there. And if you understand, everybody has to go through it. The faster you go through it, the faster you get to the other side. I love the story of the cow and the buffalo. What's the difference between a cow and a buffalo when it starts to storm? The cow runs away from the storm because it doesn't want to get wet. It doesn't want to be in that ick. So the cow, when the storm's coming, the cow runs the opposite direction. Well, what does that do mathematically? Okay. And I'm not going to give you a geography lesson, but what I will tell you is if you're running away from it, it's going to catch you because it's faster than you. And the more you run away from it, the more time you're going to spend in it. You're extending the amount of time you're in the storm. Whereas buffaloes, what they do is they see the storm coming. They say, all right, let's go. And they run into the storm because they understand if they run into the storm, they shorten the amount of time they're going to be in it because the storm is going over them while they're getting to the other side faster. It was interesting. We were on one of the safaris, and it started just pouring rain. We had unbelievable weather 99% of the time. But we were in the truck, and the rain started coming down, and that's when the lions killed the water buffalo. Was when the storm hit, because the water buffalo got distracted and the lions got focused. They both had the cover of the storm. One of them gave their life for it. and we didn't see the kill. That would have been cool if we had seen the kill. We didn't see the kill, but we saw the aftermath. And we saw about 12 lions on that water buffalo enjoying their meal. And we came back the next morning, and there was nothing left. I mean, bones were gone. Everything was gone. There was nothing for the hyenas to even pick through. And to me, that's such a perfect illustration of the storm. Storms are going to come into your life. One, are you prepared for it? Two, what are you going to make out of it? I hear people say this all the time. Oh, just my luck. I knew that was going to happen. My question to you is this: if you knew it was going to happen, why are you so upset about it? You had all this time to prepare yourself mentally since you already knew it was going to happen to you anyway. That makes sense? See, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. And so you got to be careful what you say you know is going to happen. But the law of attraction also needs intention behind it. The book, The Secret. I love the concept of the book, The Secret. But one thing The Secret doesn't talk about is this. It doesn't talk about the work behind it. One of the best examples I remember is this. This lady really wanted to be married. So she started sleeping on one side of the bed instead of sleeping in the middle of the bed. She cleaned out her closet so that there was room for men's clothes in the closet as well. She started parking on one side of the garage. What the book never talks about is she had to actually date somebody. She didn't just wake up one morning with her husband lying next to her in bed. That would be really weird. So you can do all of the prep stuff, but then you actually have to do the work as well. It's the same thing with you in your life. It's the same thing Beth and I have had to go through. So quit with honor was something I never could figure out how to do. And then the other thing was this, and this is why it's so important to get your spouse involved if you can. 1 + 1 is 11. There were days I wanted to quit. There were days Beth wanted to quit. It just was never the same day. So the days I was discouraged, she was able to support me and uplift me and speak life into me. The days she was discouraged, I was able to do the same for her. If there was ever a day where we both wanted to quit on the same day, I don't know what might have happened. And so Emily and Harry, if you guys would talk about the power of doing this as a couple, and how you how from an emotional perspective and just just when you have the bad days, because you're going to have the bad days, how you support each other through the storms.
Right. So, I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. Whenever one of us, there's been times when the both of us have been going through it one way or another. And it's just the nature of the business. Somebody's going to quit. Something's going to happen. If you're trying to make something happen in life, something's going to happen, right? There's going to be a rainy day. There's going to be something that happens to you. And what has always been the case is exactly what we're talking about. We're there to lift each other up. We're there to support each other. I've had my bad days. Emily's had hers, and that's the most important thing. It makes this business so much easier when you're not doing it alone.
And I think one of the key pieces with that is finding mentors. Like from a conversation I've had with Mike and Noelle Leventovich, just talking about how they have built the business together and the disciplines and the focus. And they talked about they have weekly, and they might even do more daily, but weekly meetings with each other where they look at their finances, they look at where their business is at, what was production for that week, where are we trying to get to, reevaluating the goals. And so that's something that we've implemented together is making sure that we have those things in place of what are we going to try to do this week, what was last week like, what adjustments do we need to make, where do we need to be traveling. And we also have staff like Angel in our office helps with getting a lot of those numbers together so that when we're having that conversation, it's just focused on, okay, what is the information and how do we execute from here? So learning from people who are in the business has also been key because we're a year into marriage. It's not like we know everything about marriage, and we definitely don't know everything about business. So learning from those.
The other thing I will say too is that we dream together, right? It's very hard if you have a dream and the person that you're with doesn't have that same dream as you. So the fact that we're in this together, we're together with each other in terms of dream building, it really helps a lot.
So yeah, absolutely. One of the things I see kill more marriages than anything else is one spouse keeps growing and the other one doesn't. And their vision of where their life can be keeps growing and the other one doesn't. So I love the fact that you guys are talking about it all the time. Sarah, from the other perspective, because a lot of people, are doing it by themselves. Jacob is out serving our country, laying it on the line for America to be free, serving in the Air Force. This is not in his wheelhouse. But talk about how but he is every bit a supportive spouse to you as somebody who is actively recruiting or making sales or things like that. So talk about maybe some of the conversations you and Jacob have had in terms of that. And then to also talk about, kind of piggyback on top of what Emily just said about having friends and mentors in the business that can help you navigate life as life, not just in business.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband's not in the alliance. You're not going to see him at conferences. Very rarely you will. But frankly, use or lose is not something that we're ever going to know as a military family. We travel too much to have the time to spare. He's not going to be in Thailand. He's going to be deployed, and that's a bummer, but it does mean everyone gets to meet Andrew. So he gets to be my plus one. But my husband is 100% supportive. When I talked about getting into the estate planning especially, and that is a big upfront commitment. That's the mailing cost. It meant getting an office. In the area I'm in, we don't have a Regis type space. I was signing a year-long lease. And we had those conversations, but it was never I don't know that this is the right move. I don't know that we should do this. I don't know that you can do this. It was always, okay, let's figure out how to make it work. And when we moved to Georgia and I started working again, it was a very easy decision for us to hire a nanny. We've made those commitments together that these are the things we want to prioritize. And my husband's job is his dream. This is what he wants to do. This is what he loves to do. It's what he felt called to do. It also has a very big price tag that affects a major portion of our lives. It decides where we live. Essentially every job decides where you live and what kind of car you can drive and all those things. But it decides what vacations he's at. It decides when he gets to see his family, when he gets to see us, and all those things. And so because his job demands such a big sacrifice, it's always been very easy for him to say yes when we needed to sacrifice for me. Because that's how we went into marriage, is that we are equal partners and we both have dreams. And as much as they may kind of fight against each other on a surface level, we know there is a way to make both of them work. And we went into this knowing, okay, let's find let's find that path. Let's find the way to make those work.
Awesome. Awesome. And talk a little bit about your mentors in business.
Yeah.
I know Jake and Belle Krause have been very instrumental in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, Belle Krause has been my number one go-to. You know, she has been the leader of the estate planning. So when I got into that, she's been my go-to resource on, I'm struggling with this. What are you doing? How do you fix it? But even before that, when I was just coming to the conferences, I wasn't selling, you know, I love the people, I love the culture, and I knew this was helping me grow, even if I wasn't turning it into insurance policies at the time. She was my number one person. And Belle is not this accessible to everyone, but anytime I text her having a military spouse problem, I'm getting a call in the next 20 minutes because she knows where I'm at, she knows where I've been, and she navigated raising 2 children while Jake was gone. She navigated at the end of his career bringing him home of she found her work, she found her passion and her mission and navigating that process. And so for me to be doing that same thing of figuring out how to make my dreams work within the context of raising kids and being a military spouse, she has been a godsend. She is here for me. That is why God brought her to the Alliance.
I believe it. You know, and that's one of the things that I would tell you is, you know, Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called The Advantage, and it talks about what are the unfair advantages some companies have over other companies. And what I would tell you, the Alliance's unfair advantage is the leadership team and the culture that we have. You know, headed up by Andy Albright, Andy and Jane Albright, and Andy setting the emotional and psychological pace for all of us to fall behind. But it's also the rest of the leadership team. It is the Leventoviches, it is the Krauses, it is the Davies. You know, it's these folks who are out there who have lived life. I remember when Harry was first getting started, I said, look, I'm your father-in-law. That has its own that has its own baggage that we'll need to work through and figure our way through. Who do you need to talk to? Because I can't, I'm trying to welcome him to the family. I can't be beating him up about his inactivity and things like that. I said, who do you relate to? And he said, Andy Riddle. And, I immediately connected him with Andy Riddle. And Andy was investing a lot of time into Harry and coaching him. That's the unfair advantage of the Alliance, is that we have all of those people. And the beauty of it is this: maybe you're not a military family, so you don't relate to what Sarah just said. But I promise you this, whatever circumstance you're dealing with, we have somebody in the Alliance who has not only experienced what you're dealing with, they've overcome it and have thrived beyond it. And so that's the beauty of this is why you want to come to the conferences, so you can learn everybody's stories. So you can find that person that you can link up with, and you can find that lifeline to keep you going and to help you through those battles and to help you continue on forward through everything. Okay, so Beth, let's talk about. Everybody sees our lives today. They hear we just came back from 2 weeks in Africa, doing all of those things, and they see us on all the trips, and we have the hardware from the Alliance, and we have the nice house, and we've accomplished a lot of dreams here. Talk about what people haven't seen for us to get to that point where we're accomplishing those dreams.
Yeah. So Adam has alluded that we had to grow to get to where we are. And this, let's go all the way back to my first date with Adam. And it was that the date was our junior prom, but it was our chemistry teacher that asked me to the prom first for Adam. Like, hey, would you go to the prom if Adam asked you? And then that was followed by, I was at a student government meeting, and Adam's sister asked me, hey, would you go to the prom with Adam? Then after he got 2 assurances that yes, I'd say yes, then he called me. Okay, so he doesn't like rejection. then he told me flat out when we started dating, he's like, hey, I don't like these phone conversations. I don't talk on the phone. So if I ever call you, it's to tell you what time I'm going to pick you up, and that'll be the end of it. That's romantic, guys. And so even, to see that Adam makes his living now on the phone, that he is constantly talking to people, and while he does a tremendous amount face to face, following the example of what Andy has done serving the Alliance team, he still spends a lot of time on the phone. It's still not his go-to means of communication, but he does it because it's what's needed, and the people that he's talking to need his guidance. And so it's just been fun watching him overcome that, and still, it doesn't mean that you still like everything you got to do, but you got to do it because the dream is big enough. We've gone, like, if you want to talk about financial struggles, we led the pack. We got all the stories. I know what it's like to have bill collectors call. I know what it's like to unplug the phone so the phone just doesn't ring because the bill collectors are calling so much. I understand that. I think because for most of these years, my primary role has been the supportive spouse. Yes, I am licensed now. I have sold, I do some help with training, but for the bulk of our 34 years in business, it has been Adam who's been out there taking a lot of the blows, but then I was at home dealing with the repercussions of those blows. And so understanding how fragile that mindset is. Thankfully, Adam bought into the books. He bought into the seminars. He wanted to learn and grow. It was still a battle. And I remember one time, I was just like, I'd look in his eyes and he'd look lost, and I'd be like, hey, we got to do this thing, trying to pump him up. And in that moment, pumping him up wasn't what he needed, because he just turned around and looked at me. He was standing in his closet, and he turned and he looked at me and he said, I am just trying to hold on. And that's when I'm like, all right, Andy, call your boy. Because the saving grace has been that mentorship. And I remind everybody, like we see Andy today and his tremendous success. Andy was still that beacon of success for us when he still had a job as a plant manager. So wherever you are in your life and in your business right now, you can be that beacon of hope for somebody else. If you are working on your dream and you're living in the possibilities and you're putting in the work and going through the struggle to make those dreams come true. But it has been in those moments when Beth's voice, supportive wife, loving him, believing in him, I wasn't enough sometimes to pull him out. So we needed the people that would speak life into him. And Andy has been huge for that. And I think back to conversations that, Adam's had with Stephen Davies and with Mike and Noel, and just people who are also in the trenches, who have come through. They've got the smoke of battle. Those are people that you can go and talk to because they've survived something. I remember years ago when we were Andy was doing a meeting. He was pulling together some of the top people, and we were starting to make the core values, and we're kind of coming up and defining all that. And Andy asked the room. He said, because whoever's going to be at the top, people are going to have ebbs and flows in business. And so if you, for whatever, didn't make the cut to be in the inner circle the next time we pull the inner circle together, what do you want from the people who have been in the inner circle? And our answer was, they have to have taken some blows. They have to know what it's like to be gut punched, to have the wind totally knocked out, and then to come back. because then you know you have a character. So if you start off, and we have some people that start off with fast success, if you start off and you never have a trouble, great, we're going to cheer you on. But the respect comes because you've come through something. And sometimes people who have fast starts here have come through something somewhere else. So they also have a smoke of battle. Excuse me. But we've got to have that fight. And you've got to know that when you're going through something, someone else has gone through it too. It's not a slap against who you are. It's not a lack of you can't cut it. This is life. And business is going to require battles. It's always going to be something. And so we've been through those dark nights when you think that the world is ending and crashing around you. And I don't want to be, the dream is what gets you through, and the people that help build that dream is what gets you through. But when you come through one storm, there will be another. Like you are either, because you're up here and you're breathing, you're either just coming out of a storm, you're in the middle of a storm, or you're about to go in the storm. And so understanding that when you see the shiny and you see the pretty and you see the success, they're battles that have been overcome. And so just run into that storm and embrace it, and then find the people that are going to help pull you out, because those trenches, you need those battle buddies who are just they're going to get you. And it's like that no man left behind. They're not going to leave you behind. And we're so thankful to all the Alliance leadership that has not left Adam and Beth behind.
Yeah, it's and look, we do this. You can't see me. You see what we want you to see. Because my burdens aren't for you to deal with. Andy's burdens aren't for the Alliance to deal with. And if you think Andy's life is perfect, then you're wrong. Nobody's life is perfect. He's dealing now. Is he worried about making sure the lights stay on? No, he's not worried about that. But there are things he has to deal with at his level that he has to deal with. And none of us can understand some of those things that he's having to deal with. And we'll never know what those things are. And so whatever level you get to, you're going to have those things. But so the question becomes, well, if it's going to be hard, is it worthwhile? I don't know. Is working for the next 40 years at a job that you don't like, that doesn't inspire you, that barely keeps the lights on so that you can retire at half of what you couldn't live on to start with? Is that a better alternative than fighting through the things you're going to have to fight through in business? I don't know. For Beth and I, it never was a better alternative. It was never, we're what you call unemployable. Okay. I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to be able, and I'm willing to take the risks, and I'm willing to put in the time, and I'm willing to fight the battles so that I can control what the things I can control. When I was a school teacher, so many things were out of my control. Ball game duty and dances and bus duty. You know what? It rained during bus duty too. And what I'd do, I'd get wet. And then I'd go inside and have to teach wet. Okay. And I didn't have a choice of whether I had to come back for the dance or not. And there were never, because that was part of my job. And basically what the contract said is, and whatever else the principal asked you to do. That was in the contract. Teaching was not my job. My job was whatever the principal wanted me to do. That was my job. And so what are you're having trade-offs anyway. What are you trading it off for? Are you trading it off for a life you only dreamed of? Are you trading it off for security and safety that is never going to fulfill you? And setting an example for your kids that hey, playing small is okay. And if you want to play small, play small. That's an internal thing for each person on this call to decide. But what I will tell you is your kids are watching. I thought I did a better job hiding all the crap from Beth than apparently I have. I think I did a good job hiding it from the kids. They don't know the stress that I was dealing with, that we were dealing with. They don't know the financial, the thin, for many years in our business, the financial hardship that we were dealing with, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and just they don't know. I didn't want them to know, and I didn't want to not do stuff for them because I hadn't taken care of things. So Sarah, talk about what it was like growing up, whether you saw the struggle, or did you see any of the struggle, or did you just see us putting on that facade of everything's going to be fine, everything's perfect, you don't need to worry about it? And then also what that led to for you, growing up in the household, in terms of how you were able to live life. Like you got to do stuff that a lot of kids never get to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was not aware of the struggle growing up. I knew how much you were gone. I knew how much you were working. I knew how tired you were, but I didn't know the finances behind it. I was never questioning, is the power going to be on? Is there going to be food on the table? All those, that never crossed my mind. And it has been good learning more of those stories. I know I don't know anywhere close to everything at this point. But it has been good learning more of those stories as I've gotten older and transitioned into finding my own struggles and things like that. But I always had my needs met above and beyond. For one thing, my birthday is December 12th. And my brother's birthday is December 20th. And we were raised in a multi-religious Jewish and Christian family. So December meant Hanukkah and Christmas. And I hear so many people with December birthdays talk about getting their one happy Christmas and happy birthday and Merry Christmas. Here's your present. I never felt that. I never felt gypped because of when my birthday landed. I never felt like Emily got more for her birthday because she was the only July kid. And I know that's a smaller thing. I had those big things. I went on a mission trip to Nicaragua when I was in 7th grade. I didn't want to go alone, so my mom came with me. I went to Italy, Sicily, and Greece when I was a sophomore in high school, which is why I was not on the cruise that the rest of my family went on. And I had those opportunities, and when it came down to asking, can I do these things? The question was not, can we spend the money? The question was, is this important to you? And my parents were always good about, this costs money. This is a thing that we're investing in. It needs to have value. This isn't something for nothing. The money's not just growing on a tree that we can take out. But it was, if this is important to you, we're going to figure it out and we're going to do it. And the answer is yes. We'll figure out the logistics next.
Emily, same thing for you.
Can you hear us okay? They are leaf blowing.
Yeah.
Or is that...
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think one of the biggest things, credit to Mama, is she always built you up as a hero. And so in those times where you were fighting, I didn't know it was because financial struggles or anything, but in the times you were fighting, she was at home building you up as your daddy is a hero. He's out there serving, he's out there building, he's helping people. And then you always made it intentional time to spend with us, dream building. You were always painting that vision of what could be for tomorrow, not, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. I see so many of my friends who grew up around it. And I mean, people who are parents, and it's like, oh, we can't do McDonald's, or, oh, you can't do that. And even if you can't, focusing on that was never what you did. It was always, this is what we're going to be doing. And it helps hide anything else. So it is interesting, like Sarah was saying, hearing on the backside of things that were going on. And I mean, if you look back, you could piece some stuff together, but it wasn't evident because of the dream you painted for us.
Yeah, and that's something that we were very intentional in trying to do. And look, there is no victory without sacrifice. So that, you've heard them talk about time away, things like that. What were some things that Mom and I did? Because we went on a lot of trips too. One of the beauties of being in the Alliance is that we get to go to some really cool places, which you both have experienced that as well, through the Alliance. But so what are some things that you saw Mama and I do, Beth and I do, and to be intentional about making you feel special and important, even though Mama, Beth talked about the non-negotiables. What events were non-negotiables? Sarah, we'll start with you in terms of that.
I know I don't remember specific events that you missed because they obviously were not the most important things in my life. But I do remember it must have been science fair or something, and I'd gone to the next level or something, and you guys were on a trip and you weren't home, but you sent flowers. And as a middle schooler, high schooler, whatever I was, it was those intentional moments of, hey, we're not there, but we're proud of you. I remember in middle school when they would do the Valentines and the random holiday things, and you could spend $1 and someone would get a card with a lollipop or whatever. I almost always got a card from you and Mama. Like there was always that moment, that little note, that little touch of, hey, even if I'm not home today, I'm thinking of you. I love you. I'm proud of you. And there were a lot of those little touches, and we had the big things, the big moments, but we also had a lot of those little things. When we first moved to Wilmington, I remember this, Webkins were really big for anyone kind of Emily and my age. And we didn't have any Webkins at that point. But I remember we moved to Wilmington. This was a huge transition. I was in 4th grade, and we get to the new house and we all go up to our room, and there's a Webkins waiting for us. Our first one, and it's got a letter, and mine was something like, hey, Sarah, my name is whatever the Webkins was. I'm really excited to start this adventure with you in Wilmington. And we had all those touches that were not costing an arm and a leg. We're not talking about the trips to Italy, even though we had those things. It was the little stuff of, I know I'm not necessarily here in this moment, but I'm with you, and we've got your back no matter where you're going.
Well, I'll let the Alliance world figure out whether that was Beth writing the letters or me writing the letters for the Webkins.
They were typed, so you'd never know.
It was before ChatGPT too, so that had to come from our brains. So Emily, same thing. Maybe some to the parents on here struggling with time they're investing into their business. I hope you see our kids ended up okay. They didn't feel like they were diminished or their experiences were diminished. Emily, kind of the same thing there as we're wrapping up this call. What are anything specific that you could tell other parents, hey, this is what we did?
Yeah, so I know we're running low on time, but I'd say 3 things real quick. Number 1, you never made our dreams devalued. Like, what you were intentional about asking us what was important to us and doing whatever you could to support that. And part of that came with, I remember at the beginning of the months, you were planning out your travel schedule, but it was also, what are the big things? And I can't be at everything, but what is the priority? And we learned that from coming to events and getting around, but also seeing you prioritize. You weren't at everything, but you were at the things that mattered. So those would be 2 of the biggest things that I saw. And then learning our love languages. I think that was huge, because what makes Sarah feel important is different than what makes me feel important. And for me, words of affirmation is huge. And so I have in my closet back at your house, all the different letters that you wrote to me, like little cards before you'd be going out on a trip, or little Valentine's Day bears. And you were always intentional about whatever each individual person needed, making us feel loved and noticed, because it's just as important.
Awesome. Beth, wrap up thoughts?
Yeah. So what I hope you get from this, from seeing our kids, is that everything that you're doing today has ripple effects. So you have agents that you're hiring and you're investing in their lives, and then you've got your kids who are watching everything that you're doing. It is ripple effects. So what you do to your kids, you're seeing evidence as they've come into their own adulthood. And just think about the power that happens when you affect your family, and then you help other families affect their kids, and we get to create a world where people see potential, where people see possibility. And instead of all the negative that gets surrounded, you turn on the news, you turn on whatever streaming device you use or whatever, and it's junk after junk after junk, and how hopeless life is. And I want to tell you that within the Alliance, there is a group of people that is telling you, if you will go through the struggle, if you will be that caterpillar that goes in the cocoon, that goes where it's dark, that goes where there's all kinds of change happening and you don't know what it is. If you will then break out, that you have that chance to become that beautiful butterfly. And this is a place, these are people that will help you accomplish the dreams that you have in your life. Please, please, please don't minimize your dreams.
Guys, fight for it. It's worth it. Build that dream. Take the time. Dare to believe that you can have the life you want to have. Guys, we enjoyed it. Thank you, Andy Albright, for letting us chat with your team for the last 90 minutes. And we look forward to being back on Friday and telling you some more stories. And I hope you guys got something good out of this. Love you guys. Appreciate you big time. Take care, Alliance Nation.